Hello and welcome to this episode of Self-Made. I'm your host, D. Brown, CEO. Joining me today is the Chief Higher Education Officer for the P3 Group. Please help me welcome John Smith to Self-Made.
Hey, D. How's
Hey,
it going?
man, glad to have you on the show.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so John, first I want to start by just highlighting the fact that you work for the P3 Group, which is my firm, and you serve as the Chief Higher Education Officer for the company. And we're going to get into some of the work that you do there at the P3 Group. But I know you grew up in Clarksville, Mississippi, a small, rural, impoverished community in the Mississippi Delta. So just so my viewers can understand your background and your journey, talk to me about growing up in Clarksville, what it was like.
Well, growing up in Clarksdale, it wasn't the worst of worst, but it was hard coming from the Mississippi Delta and just knowing that the tables would normally be, the odds were stacked against you, and you just had to work a little harder than everyone else. You really put your best foot forward because most of the times the people that wound up staying there weren't the ones that you wanted to be like.
Right, right. And so growing up there, what were some of the challenges that you faced in the community?
Well, in the community, we had a lack of resources. We kind of pooled together and made sure that we were able to carry on the normal functions with your little league baseballs and your t-balls and those things, but we didn't have a lot of the fundamental things as related to furthering your education that a lot of the other communities had. A lot of the programs, a lot of the things that were poured into other communities weren't poured into the Mississippi Delta.
Right. Now, you played football and sports in high school, and what was that like there in Clarksdale?
Well, that was one of the driving forces that helped a lot of people get out of Clarksdale. The football took me all over Mississippi, took me throughout the state, and it actually opened doors for me. It paid for my college. I didn't have student loan debt, because of football. And football brought me a lot of brothers. It taught me a lot of great things. I watched older gentlemen like yourself, who were Wildcats, and I wanted to be exactly like them and like my brothers and other people in the community, because we saw football take them from the Mississippi Delta to your numerous universities and across the globe.
Right. And I'm a big believer that a lot of the principles that we learn in sports and athletics transcend into what we do in business and life, etc. What are some of the lessons you learned from playing sports that have helped you grow as a business person?
Well, one of the greatest lessons that I learned in playing football is understanding that when you get hit in the mouth, you got to get back up and get ready to get hit again.
Right. That's very accurate. And I know you are you study a lot of historical figures. But who are some of the historical figures that have influenced you in terms of the direction you've taken in your life?
Well, just growing up in Clarksdale and understanding the blues mantra of Clarksdale, but then understanding the whole civil rights aspect. So you had your Aaron Henrys, your Dr. Vera Piggies, your Dr. Joe Nathan Harris, those people within the community. We were able to look at them and see them, travel from that community and make waves across the United States, across the world, and become great people, great successes, along with your blues singers, your Sam Cookes, your Ike Turners, your B.B. Kings, all those Mississippi Delta legends.
Right. And so in Clarksdale, you mentioned there were very limited resources, but also when you think about from the standpoint of role models, there were role models there, but still there were limitations for the most part in terms of what you could see and imagine. So it took really traveling and going abroad to to expand your horizon and your thought process. But then there were also, I know you did a lot of studying, you know, on figures like W.E.B. Du Bois and others. How did those studies influence you?
Well, W.E.B. Du Bois, Booker T. Washington, those figures, Frederick Douglass, you know, just being able to, I had a history teacher by the name of Miss Martha Espy, and she would always encourage us to read things. She would encourage us to read about our history. And when I would read about the W.E.B. Du Bois's, the Marcus Garveys, the Booker T. Washingtons, and you would see the different things that they wanted for our people.
Yeah.
And they did differ. You know, W.E.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington and Marcus Garvey, all three had different perspectives on things.
Right.
My favorite of all was Booker T. Washington because he spoke more to understanding how to do things with your mind and with your hands.
Right.
W.E.B. Du Bois was more of you get an education and you class yourself within the education. Garvey was more of a Pan-Africanism and being able to take your people and take them back to Africa and build there. Well, I was one that wanted to be still in Mississippi around my people, so I took to Booker T. Washington and understanding how to take one's mindset, you know, one's abilities and one's knowledge and what you can do with your mind and with your hands.
Yeah.
And my father was also a great influencer of that because he always taught me to understand to do things with your mind and your hands, and they can never be taken away from you.
Right, and I know your father was a big influence in your life, and you recently lost him.
Yes.
But talk about, you know, your father and the influence he had on your life.
Well, just growing up, understanding that, you know, there was going to always be two ways to do things. There was going to be a right way and there was going to be a wrong way, and he demanded things to be done the right way.
Yeah.
You know, and it was one of those things where even if I did do something the wrong way, I was trying to figure out how to explain it to him the right way.
Right. And you worked for him as well growing up.
For $2 an hour for Smith Construction. That's how I even got started in construction. I was a professional lumber toter, as he called me.
Yeah.
He told me I did my best work at 4:30 because it was quitting time. You know, but he instilled in me the hard work, the understanding that if you tell a person it's going to take 19 2x4s, it shouldn't take 21.
Right.
You know, and he would challenge me to understand exactly how many rows of how many squares in a ceramic tile building would it, you know, would equal a square foot, or how, you know, I actually got a few whoopings because I didn't remember that it only took 9 tiles to make a square foot when we were doing a bathroom wall. I came in the room with 12.
Yeah.
You know, and he's like, no, you're creating scrap. You know, that's going to hinder you from doing a job. So he always taught me that, you know, if you do a job well, you know, people will call you back to do another one.
Right.
You know, if you don't have a lot of scrap laying beside the building and trying to take something home to work on some, or I'll take these 2 home with me. You know, he believed in doing it right, you know, being very precise.
Right. And I know that your early career, you've served in a lot of different capacities before you came on to the company with us. Talk about kind of your early professional career, some of the, you know, jobs or roles you've held that were impactful.
Well, my first job after matriculating at Alcorn State University, my first job was with First American Bank, a small minority bank in Jackson, Mississippi. It's now Liberty Bank. I was a retail manager trainee. I managed all the customer service agents. I managed the tellers, and it was a great experience in banking until I realized that retail banking you didn't make any money.
Right.
You know, and I spent a lot of time, you know, at the bank and understanding how the banker system worked. But I did meet a lot of people there that I saw doing various things. I met your different construction guys. I met your different logistic guys, you know, and I saw them coming in and out of the bank. Okay, I'm like, okay, they have money in their account. Yeah. And I'm the retail manager trainee. There's not the same amount of money in their account and my account. I need to try to do what they're doing. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what inspired you to leave. And once you left the bank, kind of talk about what you did later.
Well, I left the bank and I got into, I started my own marketing company. I started doing urban lifestyle marketing for a few companies. I went to Dallas, Texas, my first big urban lifestyle campaign. I got to dress with some coffee stockings and put a tinfoil on and be a Hershey's Kiss, for $200 a day. And I was in tall cotton, as they say.
Right.
So that was one of the things. But also being in that realm of doing urban lifestyle marketing, it taught me, about the different things, the different facets of marketing, the different facets of doing business and how business is actually done.
Right. And so one of the things that I've noticed about people that are trying to progress in business and in their careers, a lot of times people get stuck with just being comfortable and not wanting to adapt to change or not wanting to have change or disruption in their everyday life. But, of course, it takes that to progress. What is your philosophy on being able to make decisions to better your life? And sometimes it disrupts the apple cart a little bit in the beginning.
Yeah, well, one of the great things about change is you don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
And when you don't know what's going to happen, sometimes it's scary. Sometimes it can be fun. It's like a movie. It's like watching your own movie. And if you don't want to watch your own movie unfold and be the star of your own of your own self, it kind of leaves you in that place. So change and being able to adapt to change is one of those things where you just grab a hold to it, because it's very much easier to apologize for doing something than not doing anything at all.
Right. I think a lot of people, they are afraid to fail. I think that's something that's a challenge that I think a lot of people deal with, thinking that if they make a decision and it doesn't work out the way they plan, they'll be accused of being a failure. But of course, that failure is part of those ingredients that goes into really being successful, and trying to teach people that concept is sometimes challenging. What is your philosophy on failure and risk taking? Well,
the greater the risk, the greater the reward. All right. But failure is just a stepping stone to success.
Right.
So if you ever meet a successful person, you've met a person who has failed multiple times.
Absolutely.
If you're gonna say I'm highly successful, I've never failed, that's probably not gonna be true.
Right.
And we know that as being successful entrepreneurs, as successful businessmen, there's never this perfect stair that you're just going to take one step at a time.
Right.
And a lot of people, they think they can just go press the button. They're going to wait on the elevator.
Right.
My favorite route is the stairs, because you're going to meet a lot of different people on the stairs.
Yeah.
If you get on the elevator with a person, you're only on the elevator with them for a split second. But
Right.
when you see a person on the stairs, and if y'all going way up there, y'all got a long journey, so you may get tired for a while and have to sit down, and he passed by you and he'll tell you, hey, and you got to keep going, because
Right.
at the end of the day, you're still going to the top.
Right.
You're just not pressing that button in that elevator.
Yeah. Well, I think that everything in business and success start with mindset. And of course, I talk about this all the time. But I think that one of the challenges that people deal with is that by nature, by just processes, we're taught to be mediocre. We're taught to be average. Like, we feel like in school, where it all began, if you go to school, you make 100 in class, then you are considered to be excellent. They say you made 100, you're excellent. But, I tried to explain this concept to someone that was leaving high school, going to play D1 football, that, yeah, you were excellent in high school. But where you going, when you go to Alabama to play football, everyone's excellent. Everyone that comes to that program is excellent. So now, what was deemed to be the pinnacle of success is now the average.
Right.
And so being able to grasp that concept that doing 100%
Isn't good enough.
it's not good enough. It's average. And we're taught in school that if we make 100, we're the top of the class, we're excellent, and we think that just making 100 is going to get us through life. And I've seen a lot of people go off and fail in business and athletics because they felt like I could give that same amount of effort when I get around people that are all thriving to get to the same dream. We're all fighting for the same dream.
Right, and I tell people all the time, yesterday's touchdowns don't count on today's scoreboard.
Right.
So what you did to be successful today, you can't do the same thing tomorrow.
Right.
Because yesterday's touchdowns don't count on today's scoreboard. So you have to score some more touchdowns for today's scoreboard. So
Right.
I mean, you have to do a whole lot extra. So
Right.
you have to give that 150, 160% because everyone else is giving 100%.
That's right. That's the only way you'll have a competitive advantage.
Exactly. Everyone's wakes up at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
It's the person that wakes up at 3 or 4.
Right.
Or it's the person that gets knocked down and doesn't give up.
Right.
That just keeps on trying. I remember back when I was playing college football, and we had a little short defensive tackle, probably about 5'2", 5'3", and you're like, oh, why would he even be on the field?
Yeah.
It was because he never stopped.
Right.
He never quit. He didn't quit until the whistle blow.
Right.
But we had a 6'5" guy, that fit the mold.
Right.
That, once he fired off the ball and took on his man, he stopped and watched the rest of the play.
Right.
But the 5'2" guy, we ran the play down. If it was a fumble down the field, he jumped on the fumble. He was around the ball.
Right. He always was going to be around the ball.
Always going to be around the ball.
Be in the action.
And that's one of those things. You got to put yourself in the action. You got to put yourself in the fire. If you don't jump in the fire, you can't even talk about being burned.
Right. That's a true statement. I wanted to talk about move forward to the P3 group now. So
Okay.
you serve as the Chief Higher Education Officer for the company, and you get the opportunity to work with a lot of college presidents, a lot of different administrators. And so talk to me about the role that you have at the P3 group.
Well, as Chief Higher Education Officer and being able to talk with mainly HBCUs, presidents, your CFO of the university, the development foundations, across the United States. It's a wonderful process because you get to learn what each university is doing.
Right.
As we say all the time, if you've seen one project, you've seen one project.
Right.
If you've seen one university, you've seen just one university.
Right.
Everyone does their own unique thing.
Right.
So, and in each situation, you get to learn a little bit about each university, and it becomes it becomes a part of you because at the end of the day, what we do is it's like coconut farming. You know, everybody's picking up plums, but we're going way to the top of the tree.
Yeah.
So sometimes it takes a year, sometimes it takes 2.
Right.
So within that process, you're going to develop a relationship with that university.
Right.
You're going to develop a relationship with the president,
Right.
with the president's assistants, with the different people on campus.
Right.
So much so that you're going to already know that we're going to have a weekly call. So after that weekly call gets into about 6 months, you're not just going to want to talk about that call. You're going to know each other family members. Mm-hmm. You're going to want to talk about, what's going on in the climate of the country, what's
Right.
going on abroad, what's going on around the world, not just what's going on within that campus.
Right.
So it opens the door to another facet of family, to another facet of being able to take something and develop it.
Right, right. And I think that's kind of the rewarding part of what we do is that we take institutions and communities that have been overlooked, underestimated,
Right.
the underdogs.
The underdogs. A lot of these smaller universities and the underserved universities, they hadn't had developments or anything on their campuses in the last, 30, 40 years.
Right.
When you have a school that's 100 years old and they've only had developments on their campus when they started.
Right.
30 years after.
Right.
And now, we're coming to the table trying to help revitalize and wake up some of those things that have never been done.
And these institutions and communities have been really kicked to the curve, placed on the sideline, and it's really requiring us to engage into a true educational process so that they can understand that they too can have nice facilities.
Exactly.
And upgrade.
Because a lot of the presidents or a lot of the people that we encounter within the university, they are career academians.
Right.
They've been in academia, the past 12, 13 years,
Right.
and they only know the processes of government,
Right.
or the processes of the state, or the processes of the institution of higher learning.
Right.
We come in and we teach them a whole new process of what a P3 is, how we can design, build, and finance a project on their campus with no upfront capital to the university, and the university still walks away with money at the end.
Right, right. And we're finding, situations now in a market where interest rates are rising, the economy is slowing down, where we're having to even provide more significant financial support to institutions to help them get these projects to completion. And then also we're having to convince the markets that these institutions too have the ability to be successful and implement programs.
The ability to be successful, the ability to stay around.
Right.
I told them all the time, it's like the institution has been here 112 years.
Right.
Where do you foresee it going within the next 20?
Right.
But we have to still nurture those institutions and make sure that they remain, remain solvent, remain with the abilities to still educate the communities, educate the areas,
Right.
and also bring in new programs.
Right. That's right. I want to talk about the Brown Foundation, which is my 501c3. You have been a board member for the foundation for a number of years now. And so I wanted you to talk about the Brown Foundation and some of the work that we're doing around the country to support communities that we're helping to develop.
Okay, well, the Brown Foundation has really been a wonderful board to sit on, the board of the Brown Foundation, because I have seen the dramatic changes that we have made and came in and transformed communities.
Right.
I have witnessed the Brown Foundation Reading and Math Academy go from being in just one area of Harrisburg, Illinois, to this year being in about, 12, 13 states?
11 states, 51 cities.
11 states, 51 cities.
Yeah.
I've watched it. I've watched the Brown Foundation go into partnership with P3 and do your 10 grand for your band initiatives. A lot of times, people have seen 4 or 5 different HBCU bands spell it during their halftime show.
Right.
And they, hey, what's this P3?
Right.
But it's more than just a letter and a number.
Right.
And the Brown Foundation is more than just a foundation that's attached to a name.
Right.
The foundation is attached to communities.
That's right.
And we are the communities in which we serve. So it's attached to communities from Harrisburg, Illinois, as far south as St. Thomas, Virgin Islands.
Right.
So,
Right.
and we're looking, to continue to do business across the globe, across the United States,
Yep.
keep empowering communities and keep pouring into those things that have helped shape and form most of us.
Right, absolutely. And a couple programs that I just want to touch on that I'm really proud of. Our Attack on Hunger program, where we have adopted food pantries in communities as well as on college campuses. And a lot of people don't realize that about 1/3 of college students suffer from food insecurity. So they're in school, they're trying to get an education, but they don't have access to healthy food options. And so our Attack on Hunger program is one that I feel like is doing a valuable service to these institutions and communities, because a kid that's trying to get an education and trying to better their life shouldn't have to worry about where their meal is going to come from that day.
Exactly.
But the reality is a lot of college students are homeless, and a lot of college students suffer from food insecurity. And so through our Attack on Hunger program and through our initiative to bring student housing and more affordable housing into communities, we are helping to do our part to address those issues.
Because I did notice that, and I have noticed that at some of the institutions that when we do encounter and engage students, a lot of them say, hey, I got a handshake, a smile, and a kick in the butt and get out of the house when I graduated from high school.
Right.
You know, and I was, out. And I was either going to go to the military or come to college. Well, once I got to college, I got, some student loan debt. I wound up getting put on financial aid probation one semester, and I had to claw my way back up, and I had to work a couple jobs. And it's one of those things is just hunger attacks when it attacks you. It doesn't attack just your stomach, it attacks your mind.
Right.
And it attacks the ability to learn. It attacks the ability to succeed.
Right.
And that's one of the great things, like you said, about the Brown Foundation, with its attack on hunger and supplying food pantries, across the South. We're trying to make sure that we take it, nationwide, but we have, done a lot. I think over $75,000 has been committed to the attack on hunger within the last 12 months.
Right, absolutely. And then we have dedicated, millions of dollars to scholarships and other programs throughout these communities. And so those are programs that we're most proud of, more proud of that work than the for-profit work that we do.
Exactly.
Although the for-profit work helped fuel the engine that allow us to go back into these communities and give a hand up.
Right, give a hand up.
Yep.
Exactly, because it's a big difference. It's a big difference between a handshake from a client and a hug, from someone in the community.
Right.
And when they look at you in your face and they tell you, man, I appreciate this. That's a big difference from that handshake that's very transactional.
Look, I could not have said it better. We're out of time for this episode, but John, I want to thank you for being on Self-Made, man.
Such a pleasure.
Glad to have you. To my viewers, thank you for watching this episode of Self-Made with D. Brown CEO. And remember, without you, there's no me.